Imagine this. You're standing in the freezing night, the door slamming behind you, your family or the people you trusted throwing you out like you never mattered, and the whole town whispering like you're nothing but dirt. But then, in the middle of that hopeless silence, heavy boots crunch on the gravel. A cowboy you've never met before stops, looks into your tear-stained face, and instead of walking away, he kneels, lifts you up gently, and says words that feel like a miracle. You're home now. That's the kind of story we're diving into today, filled with heartbreak, betrayal, redemption, and shocking twists you won't see coming. So before we begin, make sure to subscribe, because these are the kinds of stories that not only break your heart, but put it back together again. The night was cruel, the kind of night where the wind cut through the bones like knives, and Emily stumbled into the dirt road with her clothes torn, her suitcase thrown after her like a pile of trash, and the echo of her stepfather's shouting still ringing in her ears. For years, she had endured his harsh words, his cold glares and his fists that always seemed to find her when nobody else was looking, while her mother sat in silence, afraid to fight back. But tonight was different. Tonight, he had dragged her by the arm, opened the door wide, and shoved her into the street as though she had no claim to family or love. Her knees hit the ground. The taste of blood filled her mouth, and the laughter of a few locals from the saloon down the road carried through the air. That was the moment when the headlights of an old truck cut across the darkness, and a man in a weathered hat stepped out, his boots sinking into the dirt as he walked toward her. He didn't ask what she had done or why she was there. He simply lifted her like she was the most fragile thing in the world and said softly, "You're home now." Emily had no idea that this cowboy, whose name was Jackson Cole, wasn't just offering her a bed for the night. He was offering her a new beginning, though danger secrets. And betrayal would test them both in ways neither of them could imagine. Jackson's ranch was nothing like Emily had ever seen before. Sprawling fields that stretched past the horizon, horses running free, and the sound of cattle lowing in the distance. For the first time in her life, Emily woke up in a bed where no one yelled at her, no one cursed her existence. Jackson's sister, Clara, welcomed her with warm food and clean clothes, but even kindness felt strange to Emily, who kept waiting for someone to remind her she didn't belong. As the days passed, she began to work around the ranch, feeding the animals, brushing horses and fixing fences, slowly rediscovering a strength inside her she didn't know she had. But the town wasn't kind. Rumors spread quickly about the broken girl Jackson had taken in, about how she must have been trouble to get tossed out of her home, about how no cowboy in his right mind should bother saving her. Emily heard the whispers, but she also saw something else, the way Jackson always stood beside her, the way his calm voice silenced gossip, and the way his eyes said she mattered even when she doubted herself. What Emily didn't know was that her stepfather hadn't let her go for good. He had plans, dark ones, and soon he would come to reclaim her, not out of love, but out of spite. The storm came one night, rain lashing against the windows of the ranch house, when a knock sounded at the door. Emily froze as Jackson opened it to find her stepfather standing there, drunk, angry, demanding she return. "She's my family," he growled, but his words were poison. For family had never felt like family to Emily. Jackson stood tall, his hand resting on the doorframe, his voice steady as he said, "Not anymore." The confrontation escalated, fists clenched, words exchanged like fire, until Emily's stepfather lunged. Jackson was ready. Years of ranch work had made him strong, but this was more than a fight over a girl. This was a battle for Emily's freedom. The sheriff was called, the neighbors gathered, and in the middle of it all, Emily realized she had a choice: either run like she always had, or stand her ground. And for the first time, she stood, her voice shaking but clear. "I am not your burden. I'm not your punching bag. I'm not yours." The words echoed in the storm, and with the sheriff pulling her stepfather away in cuffs, Emily felt something she had never felt before: power. The weeks that followed the storm were not a fairy tale ending, but the beginning of a new life that demanded courage every single day. and Emily felt the weight of it with every sunrise, yet also the freedom of breathing air that was finally her own. The ranch became her sanctuary, not because it erased the past, but because it gave her the chance to build a future brick by brick. And though the town continued to whisper, behind her back, calling her the girl who was tossed out or the broken one Jackson dragged home, she discovered that whispers lost their power when you no longer bowed your head in shame. And so she learned to meet their eyes, to walk through town with her chin lifted, to ride her horse with confidence, and to look at herself in the mirror without flinching. And in that slow transformation, she realized that healing was not a single moment of triumph, but 100 little choices to keep moving forward. Clara stood by her like the sister she never had, teaching her to cook meals that tasted like comfort, sitting with her during long nights when the nightmares returned, reminding her that love was not loud and violent like her stepfather had made it seem, but quiet, steady, patient like a hand resting on your shoulder to let you know you weren't alone. And Jackson, with his calm strength, became more than a protector. He became the anchor she had never known she needed, showing her how to ride horses with freedom in her veins, how to mend fences with hands that once only knew fear, and how to trust a man without waiting for the cruelty to follow. And every time he looked at her with that unshakable gaze, she felt the walls around her heart crack just a little more. Yet the greatest twist came when Clara found an old chest tucked away in the loft of the barn, and inside it were letters Emily's mother had hidden long ago. Letters that revealed the truth, that Emily's real father had once worked alongside Jackson's family on the ranch years before, that he had loved her mother fiercely but died young in an accident, leaving Emily as the living reminder of that love, a truth her stepfather could never accept because she had never been his child at all. And his hatred had not been born from who she was, but from who she wasn't. And instead of breaking her, this revelation freed her completely, because now she understood that she had never been unwanted by fate, only unwanted by a man who could not love what wasn't his. She carried that truth like a banner, and one golden evening, as the sun sank low, painting the sky in fire and gold, Emily sat on the wide porch of the ranch house, her heart steady for the first time, and Jackson lowered himself into the chair beside her, his hat tipped back, his eyes steady as always. And when she whispered through tears of gratitude, "You saved me," Jackson shook his head slowly, his voice deep and sure, saying, "No, Emily, you saved yourself. I just reminded you where you belong." And in that moment, with the land stretching endlessly before her, the shadows of the past behind her, and the warmth of family around her, Emily finally believed the words he had spoken the night he lifted her from the dirt road. Words that were no longer just a promise, but a truth carved into her soul. "You're home now."